Christmas Eve 2007. A family gathering that should have ended with gifts and laughter instead became Washington State's most calculated family massacre. Today, we reveal new evidence that changes everything we thought we knew about this cold case. Picture this: snow gently falling on the quiet streets of Carnation, Washington. Christmas lights twinkling in windows. Families preparing for their most cherished holiday. But in one modest home, beneath the festive decorations and wrapped presents, a deadly plan was already in motion. What I'm about to tell you will challenge everything you believe about family loyalty, about the people we trust most, and about how financial desperation can transform ordinary individuals into cold-blooded killers. This isn't just another true crime story. This is the account of how a casino security guard and her boyfriend systematically executed 6 family members on the holiest night of the year. Welcome to Carnation, Washington. Carnation sits 30 miles east of Seattle, nestled in the Snoqualmie Valley. Population, just over 2,000 people. The kind of place where neighbors wave to each other, where everyone knows everyone's business, and where violent crime feels like something that happens in big cities, not here. In 2007, this tight-knit community was home to a hard-working family that seemed to embody small-town values. The elderly parents had spent decades building their reputation as reliable, caring people. The father worked construction, the mother kept house, and both were beloved fixtures in their neighborhood. Their son had followed in their footsteps, establishing himself as a devoted family man with a wife who adored him and 2 precious children, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old who brought joy to everyone they met. Picture perfect doesn't begin to describe this family. But there was another family member, the daughter, 29 years old, employed as a security guard at the Muckleshoot Casino. To her co-workers and neighbors, she appeared responsible, hardworking, and devoted to her family. She visited her parents regularly, helped with household tasks, and seemed to be the kind of daughter every parent dreams of having. Christmas Eve 2007 dawned clear and cold in Carnation. The family had planned their traditional gathering. Nothing elaborate, just the warmth of being together during the holidays. But beneath the surface of this planned celebration, financial tensions had been building for months. The elderly parents owned a mobile home, and there had been ongoing disputes about payments and property arrangements. Money disagreements within families aren't uncommon, but what made this situation different was the daughter's boyfriend, a man whose presence had begun to shift the family dynamics in troubling ways. Think about your own family gatherings. Can you remember times when underlying tensions made everyone walk on eggshells? When unspoken resentments hung in the air despite attempts at holiday cheer? That's what December 24th, 2007 felt like in that Carnation home. Except the stakes were infinitely higher than anyone realized. The daughter and her boyfriend had made a decision that would shock investigators, devastate a community, and leave law enforcement questioning how 2 people could plan such calculated violence against innocent family members. What would you do if you discovered someone close to you was harboring such deadly intentions? Leave a comment below. I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts on warning signs we might miss in our own lives. By 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the daughter and her boyfriend had armed themselves. Not with a single weapon in a moment of rage, but with multiple firearms, suggesting premeditation that chills investigators to this day. They weren't acting on impulse. They weren't caught up in a heated argument. They had planned this execution. The elderly parents were the first targets. Imagine the confusion, the terror, the heartbreak of realizing that your own child, the person you raised, loved, and trusted, was pointing a weapon at you. These weren't strangers breaking into their home. This was family. But here's where the case becomes even more disturbing. After killing the parents, the daughter and her boyfriend didn't flee. They didn't panic. They waited. They knew that the son's family would be arriving later for the Christmas Eve celebration, and they positioned themselves to complete their massacre. Think about that level of calculation. The emotional detachment required to kill your own parents, then calmly wait to murder your brother, his wife, and their young children. What kind of person possesses that capability? When the son's family arrived, they walked into a death trap. The devoted father, the loving mother, and 2 innocent children, whose only crime was being born into the wrong family at the wrong time. The 6-year-old and 3-year-old never had a chance to understand what was happening to them. 6 family members. 6 lives extinguished by people they trusted completely. 6 murders committed not by strangers or random criminals, but by family. After completing their massacre, the killers didn't simply flee. They attempted to stage the scene to make it appear as though the son had killed his own family before taking his own life. They positioned bodies, manipulated evidence, and crafted a narrative that they hoped would throw investigators off their trail. This staging reveals something crucial about their mindset. They weren't remorseful. They weren't overwhelmed by what they'd done. They were thinking strategically about how to escape consequences. Even after committing 6 murders, they maintained enough composure to execute a cover-up plan. But they made one critical mistake, and that mistake would eventually unravel their entire scheme. What do you think that mistake was? Before I reveal it, take a moment to consider. If you were investigating this scene, what details might make you suspicious of the murder-suicide theory? Share your detective instincts in the comments. When authorities discovered the scene, the initial evidence seemed to support the staged narrative. A family destroyed by apparent domestic violence, a father who had seemingly snapped and killed everyone before taking his own life. It's a tragic scenario that happens more often than we'd like to admit. But experienced investigators know that domestic family annihilation cases follow certain patterns, and something about this scene felt wrong. The positioning of the bodies, the types of wounds, the trajectory of bullets, details that don't lie, even when people do. One family member's life was spared purely by chance. A last-minute schedule change meant they never arrived at the Christmas Eve gathering. Can you imagine the survivor's guilt? The knowledge that a simple change in plans was the only thing standing between life and death. This survivor became crucial to the investigation, providing investigators with information about family dynamics, recent tensions, and the daughter's increasingly concerning behavior in the weeks leading up to the massacre. The manhunt for the daughter and her boyfriend began immediately. In a small community like Carnation, 2 people can't simply disappear without leaving traces. Cell phone records, financial transactions, witness sightings. Modern life creates a digital footprint that's nearly impossible to erase completely. Within days, both killers were apprehended. But their arrests were just the beginning of a legal saga that would span years and ultimately reveal the true depths of their depravity. Despite the arrests and what seemed like overwhelming evidence, the case began to encounter unexpected complications. Legal challenges, procedural issues, and the sheer complexity of prosecuting a double-defendant family massacre case created delays that stretched months into years. During this time, evidence degraded. Witnesses' memories faded. The community's initial shock gave way to frustration with a justice system that seemed unable to provide closure. The case that had once dominated local headlines began to fade from public attention. But investigators never stopped working. Behind the scenes, detectives continued analyzing evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, and exploring new technological possibilities that might strengthen their case. This is where our story takes a remarkable turn toward modern forensic science and its power to breathe new life into cold cases. By 2020, forensic technology had advanced dramatically since 2007. DNA analysis techniques that were cutting-edge 13 years earlier seemed primitive compared to new capabilities. Genetic genealogy, the same technology that caught the Golden State Killer, was now being applied to cold cases across Washington state. In this case, new DNA extraction methods allowed forensic scientists to obtain usable genetic profiles from evidence that had been considered too degraded for analysis. Enhanced computer algorithms could now separate mixed DNA samples that had previously been impossible to distinguish. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: digital forensics. Cell phone data from 2007, social media communications that had been archived, and financial records that painted a clearer picture of the killer's motivations and planning. What investigators discovered challenged their original understanding of the case. The financial disputes weren't just about mobile home payments. They were part of a larger pattern of manipulation and control that the daughter had been exercising over her elderly parents for months. Do you think financial desperation justifies any level of violence? Or are there psychological factors that make some people more susceptible to crossing these unthinkable lines? I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. To understand how someone becomes capable of murdering their entire family, we need to examine the psychological profile of family annihilators. Criminal psychologists have identified specific patterns in these cases that help explain the seemingly inexplicable. Family annihilators typically fall into 4 categories: the self-righteous killer who believes their family has wronged them, the disappointed killer who feels their family has failed to meet expectations, the anomic killer facing financial or social collapse, and the paranoid killer driven by delusions or mental illness. The daughter in our case appears to fit the anomic profile. Financial pressures had mounted to the point where she viewed her family's continued existence as an obstacle to her survival. In her twisted logic, killing them wasn't just acceptable, it was necessary. Her boyfriend's role reveals another disturbing dynamic: the influence of romantic manipulation in family violence. Partners who enable, encourage, or participate in family annihilation often provide the emotional support that allows the primary killer to overcome natural inhibitions against murdering relatives. Consider the psychological compartmentalization required for the daughter to maintain her job at the casino, interact normally with coworkers, and plan a family massacre simultaneously. She wasn't experiencing a psychotic break. She was methodically planning multiple murders while maintaining a facade of normalcy. This dual existence, responsible employee by day, family killer by night, demonstrates a level of psychological sophistication that makes these cases particularly chilling. Looking back at the months leading up to the massacre, family members and friends identified warning signs that seemed innocuous at the time, but now appear ominous. Increased financial stress, social isolation, angry outbursts over minor issues, and a growing sense of entitlement about family resources. The daughter had begun expressing resentment about her parents' property decisions and their unwillingness to accommodate her financial needs. She complained to friends about feeling unappreciated and unsupported by her family, despite their consistent efforts to help her. Her boyfriend's integration into family conflicts marked another concerning development. When romantic partners begin taking sides in family disputes and encouraging escalation rather than resolution, the risk of violence increases dramatically. But here's the troubling reality. These warning signs are present in thousands of families experiencing financial stress and relationship conflicts. The vast majority never escalate to violence. So how do we distinguish between normal family tensions and potentially deadly situations? What warning signs have you noticed in your own family or social circle that made you concerned? Sometimes discussing these observations can help all of us become more aware of potential red flags. The legal proceedings in this case stretched across multiple years, but justice eventually prevailed. Both the daughter and her boyfriend were convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the trials, the full scope of their planning became clear. Phone records showed they had discussed killing the family for weeks before Christmas Eve. Financial records revealed their mounting desperation over debts and failed business ventures. Witness testimony painted a picture of two individuals who had convinced themselves that murder was their only solution to financial problems. The daughter showed no remorse during her trial. Even when confronted with evidence of her 3-year-old and 6-year-old victims, she maintained that her actions were justified by her family's treatment of her. This absence of empathy, even after conviction, reinforced psychological assessments that classified her as a dangerous predator unlikely to ever safely reintegrate into society. Her boyfriend, while expressing some regret, never fully accepted responsibility for his role in planning and executing the murders. Both killers seemed more concerned with avoiding death sentences than with acknowledging the devastation they had inflicted on their surviving family members and the Carnation community. The Carnation massacre fundamentally changed how Washington state approaches family violence prevention and investigation. Law enforcement agencies now receive enhanced training in recognizing family annihilation warning signs, and social services protocols have been updated to address financial stress as a risk factor for domestic violence. The community of Carnation struggled with healing from such an intimate betrayal. When violence comes from strangers, communities can unite against an external threat. But when the killers are family members, the trauma penetrates deeper because it challenges fundamental assumptions about trust and safety. Memorial services for the 6 victims drew hundreds of community members who had been touched by this family's kindness over the years. The elderly parents were remembered for their generosity and work ethic. The son and his wife were celebrated for their devotion to each other and their children. The 2 young victims were mourned as symbols of innocence destroyed by incomprehensible evil. But perhaps the most important outcome has been increased awareness of financial stress as a catalyst for family violence. Mental health resources, financial counseling services, and crisis intervention programs have expanded throughout Washington state, potentially preventing future tragedies. Despite the convictions and life sentences, questions remain about this case. Could family members have recognized the danger signs and intervened before the massacre? Were there missed opportunities for mental health intervention that might have prevented these murders? The surviving family member continues to grapple with survivor's guilt and the knowledge that a simple schedule change saved their life while 6 relatives died. This psychological burden affects not just direct survivors, but entire communities that struggle to understand how such violence emerges from ordinary family conflicts. The case also raises broader questions about financial stress and its role in family violence. In a society where economic pressures continue mounting for working families, how do we identify and support individuals before desperation drives them to unthinkable actions? The Carnation Christmas Eve massacre serves as a stark reminder that family violence can emerge from seemingly normal relationships when financial stress, psychological manipulation, and criminal thinking converge. The daughter's ability to maintain her job and social relationships while planning multiple murders demonstrates how effectively dangerous individuals can hide their true intentions. This case also highlights the importance of modern forensic technology in solving complex crimes. Without advanced DNA analysis and digital forensics, crucial evidence might never have been properly analyzed, potentially allowing the killers to escape full accountability for their actions. Perhaps most importantly, this tragedy underscores the need for communities to take financial stress and family conflicts seriously as potential precursors to violence. While the vast majority of families experiencing these pressures never escalate to violence, the warning signs deserve attention and intervention. As we conclude this examination of one of Washington State's most shocking family massacres, I want to hear from you. What do you think drives someone to destroy their own family? Have you ever witnessed warning signs that concerned you? How can communities better support families experiencing the kind of financial and emotional stress that contributed to this tragedy? The questions this case raises don't have easy answers, but discussing them openly might help prevent future tragedies. Share your thoughts, theories, and reflections in the comments below. Christmas Eve will never be the same for Carnation, Washington. But perhaps by understanding these cases, by examining the psychology and circumstances that enable such violence, we can work toward preventing similar tragedies in our own communities. If you found this case as compelling and disturbing as I did, subscribe for more cold case investigations where new evidence and modern forensic techniques are bringing justice to victims and closure to families who have waited years for answers. Trust your instincts, and remember that sometimes the most dangerous predators are hiding in plain sight among the people we trust most.